Parents have read it. What's the funniest reason you've been called into school to collect your child? Story 1. I got a phone call earlier this year from the school nurse, saying she was concerned because my son had passed out while in the lunch line. I went to pick him up and he seemed a little dazed, but okay. The kid couldn't remember anything about what happened beforehand, so I made an appointment with his pediatrician an hour later. Right as we were getting ready to leave, he sheepishly said, "Mom, I just remembered that right before I passed out, we were playing a game to see who could turn their face the reddest." So my kid had me thinking he had a brain tumor, but no. He just held his breath until he passed out, and not a single other kid thought they should mention that to the teacher. To be fair, those other kids ain't no snitches. Story 2. I was in an early morning college class, and when I got out, I realized I had missed calls, texts, and emails from my daughter's preschool. A voicemail said she had been throwing up and to please hurry and come get her. When I got to the school, the receptionist showed me to a room where my daughter was sitting with a trash can in her lap. She told me my daughter kept announcing she was throwing up and then would cough and spit in the trash can. She had no fever and was otherwise cheerful and talkative. I signed her out, got her outside and into my car when she jumped forward and kissed my cheek and told me she missed me and where I would like to go for lunch. That kid busted herself out of preschool to finagle a lunch date with me. It worked. Story 3. I got a call that my son was sick and that I had to come pick him up. It was completely fine that morning. I asked the nurse, "He really can't go back to class?" And she said, "He says he's really sick." Fine. I pick him up, and on the walk home I asked what was up. He said he had to fart really badly and didn't want to do it in class. I laughed and said, okay. 2 days later I got another call to pick him up, so I got him and it was for the same reason. I told him that it was funny once, but that from now on if he needed to fart in class, he should go to the bathroom. Story 4. This was in elementary school early years. The principal called us and looked at us with a stern look of disapproval while telling us her son was using bad language. I then proceeded to explain to her that my wife and I only spoke French at home, and we did not have television. The only English her son had ever heard was at school, so I asked her what she was going to do about it. It was one of the shortest conversations I ever had with the principal. About the principal, as I recall, she suddenly remembered she had to go do something urgently, and the meeting was over before I could say anything else. Literally, pardon my French. Story 5. My dad got sent to the principal's office for telling his 6th grade teacher she was pronouncing the state capital of South Dakota, Pierre, wrong. She kept saying Pierre, 2 syllables like the French name, and he said it was Pierre, 1 syllable like what you fish off of. He was sent off for not respecting a teacher's authority. My grandma had to drive to school to talk to the teacher and principal and said, "Well, did you ask why he says it's Pierre? Because if you did, you'd find out that both his father and I are from South Dakota. He visits his grandparents and aunts and uncles in South Dakota every summer. He knows plenty of people from South Dakota who all say Pierre. Do you know anyone from South Dakota? No? Well, take it from a South Dakotan. It's Pierre. We're not fancy French people, and stop wasting my time." Story 6. My little brother liked cheese and mustard sandwiches, so my mom made him cheese and mustard sandwiches for lunch. When the teacher asked why he didn't have any meat in the sandwich, he said either "we can't afford meat" or "my mom doesn't let me," or something like that. Whatever he said was enough to send CPS over to the house. Another time he came to school saying that his mom loved Coke, that his mom said she's to Coke. CPS was called again. They lived in a different area this time. Coca-Cola. My mom couldn't go a day without a Coke, so she joked that she was to Coke. I do see the irony that she was actually to a just not the one CPS was worried about. Why don't you have a meat in your sandwich be a question asked by anyone? Also, why does "she won't let me" warrant a CPS visit? Story 7. When I was in 2nd grade, I had a shirt that we got as a hand-down from a friend of my mom's with a braille on the front. Apparently no one ever took the time to figure out what it said. But there was a translator or key in the sleeve, so I sat down and translated the word on the front 1 letter at a time while in class. FCKOFF. "Oh my," I said. I knew this was a bad word, so I told my teacher and apologized. I wasn't in trouble, but my parents were called and asked to bring in a new shirt while I waited in the office. Our principal thought it was hilarious, apparently. We had a classmate who was partially blind. I'm unsure if she had vision enough to see my shirt, but she did know braille. I believe that is one of the reasons I had to wait in the office, though.
Hey, guess what? Our team just introduced Rufus rugs. Premium, custom, hand-tufted rugs. Imagine having your own unique rug that perfectly reflects your style. Whether you're a dedicated Naruto fan or simply adore Pokemon and can't resist displaying bus toys, we can turn your dreams into reality. We can create almost anything you want. Don't wait. Dive deeper into the world of Rufus rugs by clicking the first link in the description.
Story 8. When I was in 7th grade, I was an office runner. Basically, if your reading and writing skills were above a certain level, they let you skip reading class and just work in the office, getting kids whose parents had come from them, delivering messages, that sort of thing. Anyway, the kid next to me just wouldn't shut up. He kept rattling on and on and on, and I'd had enough of it. I had a monster fart brewing, so I cocked my leg, locked eyes with him, told him to shut his mouth, and farted on him. Or at least that was the plan. Instead, I cocked my leg, locked eyes with him, and told him to shut his mouth, and completely pooped my pants in the most glorious fashion. This wasn't a little nugget. This was a full pants load of chocolate pudding that ran down my leg and made a little puddle on the floor. Everything in the office goes dead silent, and there's no mistaking what just happened. The kid just stared at me with absolute horror in his eyes. Without looking away from him, I raised my hand and said, "Miss Office Lady, I think I need to call my mom." I went home, took a bath, threw the pants away, and came back the next day. The kid was seated on the opposite side of the room from me, and I never had a problem with him again. He feared and respected me from then on. Ah, yes, dumping all over your enemy. The ultimate power move. Story 9. Wasn't called in, but got a phone call. My 7, then 6-year-old is big into aviation history, primarily World War II planes. So we found the show all about epic battles between planes throughout various wars, and told everyone how every day when he'd get home, his parents would let him watch dogfights. She started laugh-crying with relief when I explained it was the name of the show and we weren't actually hosting a pitbull arena in her backyard. Because other kids went home already and told their parents they wanted to watch dogfights too, a letter was drafted and sent home with the class the next day to explain the difference. My son is a smart kid, but man was he confused when we had to explain the situation. Story 10. My son apparently was digging a hole by bending over and scooping sand backwards between his legs, like how a dog digs. He's a scrawny, lanky kid, so pants that are long enough are always a bit loose around the waist. Well, his drawers must have slipped a bit and one of the girls shouted, "Pull up your pants!" And he decided to pull down his underwear and shake his bottom at them. They laughed. The teacher on recess duty was crying laughing, but figured she needed to pull the maturity card and had my son go back inside to the classroom before recess was over, so his classroom teacher could explain why we don't show our bottoms in public. My son was in tears. The classroom teacher also was trying not to laugh, and I got the obligatory email saying, "Your child mooned the playground." We discussed why this was a poor choice of actions, and your child expressed remorse and apologized to his classmates. We felt no further disciplinary action was needed at school. We had parent-teacher conferences the next day. Both teachers apologized for laughing but couldn't help it because of all the kids at school. He was not the one they would have pegged as the playground mooner. Story 11. Not a parent, but as a kid, when I got Pokemon Yellow, I was so goddamn into that when we went out for lunch one day at school, I got inside this huge bush that was practically hollow inside. It was among a load of other large bushes and trees at the side of the school field and rarely ever was entered by students because we weren't really allowed. So I sat there for hours playing Pokemon. When it came out, it was 3 p.m. School closed at 3:30. I had been in there since 12:30, and my mother was at the school and was freaking out because she thought they let me leave the school alone. Story 12. It's funny now, but it wasn't at the time. One day I was called to pick up my daughter from school. I asked why and was vaguely told she had been caught cheating, was being disrespectful to the teacher, and had destroyed government property. Holy crap, I thought. What had she done? My mind instantly went through scenarios in which she had cheated on a test, got caught, then my sweet little 7-year-old had cursed the teacher while throwing something through a window. I go to the school, found my scared daughter in the principal's office looking totally dejected, and asked for an explanation. I discovered the cheating was that she had giggled while playing a game where someone was it, and the other half of the classroom had to guess who it was. The disrespecting teacher was from her crossing her arms when she was being told how she wrecked the game. The best was the explanation for destroying government property. During story time, she was picking at loose carpet threads. I was extremely angry with my daughter the whole drive from work, and after this load of what the it instantly transferred to anger with the school. You called me here because she giggled, crossed her arms, and picked at an old nasty carpet? I was hot and took my daughter home, letting her know I was a bit upset with her, but let her know that there would be no more punishment. She'd been through enough. We went home and watched cartoons, and I made her favorite grilled cheese and tomato soup for lunch. I'm surprised the teacher and the principal explained all this to him with a straight face. If they spoke to themselves in front of a mirror, they'd realize how stupid they are. Hey guys, just a quick side note. If you like listening to the stories and love how I deliver them, please press the subscribe button and click on the notification bell so you'll get notified of my future uploads. Thanks. Now back to the stories. Story 13. My mom has one. So, me, I guess. When I was about 10, in year 4, I threw a chair and hit my male teacher after he called me a liar for saying I have no father to attend a father and son event. Broke his nose. For clarity, he was a religious prick, and that wasn't the worst he said or done to that point, but that was the last straw that broke the camel's back. My mother came to the school ashamed, until she found out what the circumstances were, and then we both laughed about it, along with the principal. It was that trip to the hospital that I saw the teacher fired. He had a history of making young boys snap, and as it turns out over 20 years later, a history of young girls. So, no regrets. Story 14. In 2nd grade, there were a couple of boys that were running up to girls at recess and pulling their pants down, then making a scene so everyone would look. And when they tried to do it to me, I chased them down and pulled their pants down in front of everyone and yelled and laughed, just like they had been doing. It got sent to the principal's office. My mom had to come and get me. The principal told her he was going to call CPS because if I was going around pulling little boys' pants down, there was obviously some kind of mistreatment going on at her house. There wasn't. I just wanted those jerks to see what it felt like so they'd stop doing it. Also in kindergarten, my mom got called to the school because I called the teachers dumb. She was spelling my name wrong, I argued with her, and she took me to the principal and said I might be special needs because I couldn't spell my name. Turns out when my dad registered me, he spelled my name the way he had wanted it spelled, not the way it was actually spelled. He was never allowed to register me for anything ever again. And to this day, he spells my name wrong on cards and presents as a joke. They got in trouble. After my mom came to the school and pulled the principal over the front desk by his tie for insinuating that I was being at home, he asked the other girls in our class if they had been pantsed by the two boys, and they all said they had. So the boys got suspended, and I got to go back to class. Story 15. Not me, but my sister. She got a call from her son's very Catholic school that he needed to be picked up. She gets to the school and the principal said that he had to go home for the day because he peed on the tree outside at recess. He really laid into her about how they had to bleach the tree. Seriously, they poured bleach on the tree because a little kid peed on it. And it was terrible, and how she shouldn't be teaching her son these things. My sister looked him straight in the eye and asked, "Do you really think I have the right plumbing to have taught him that? Yell at my husband when he comes in next time." Bleaching trees has got to be one of the better things I've heard all day. They did more damage to the tree bleaching it than the kid pissing on it. Story 16. Not a parent, but when I was a kid, I was pretty troubled at school because that place honestly sucked. In 4th grade, this mean kid sitting next to me threw stuff at me. He's still a jerk, honestly, and I was getting sick of it. I took my book and started a conversation that went like, "Hey, you know why I like this book? Because it can be used as a shield." He threw something at me and I used the book as a shield, going, "Look, I have a shield." He paused and I did too. Then I went, "Another reason." I whacked him on the head with it and went, "Look, it can whack too." I was sent home for that. That kid was biased too. Story 17. I received a call from the vice principal of my daughter's school one day while I was at work. I could tell the VP was holding back her laughter, but she tried to remain professional. "Hello, your daughter acted out in class today. The children were switching from coloring to reading on the carpet. She threw her crayons down and pointedly said to the teacher, 'Are you freaking kidding me?' My knee-jerk reaction was, 'Damn it, are you freaking kidding me?' It is clear where she learned this from. My second thought was, damn, I have a kid in junior kindergarten that knows how to use that phrase in the correct form. The following year, the VP is no longer at the school. We attend similar social groups and talk often. She loves to tell me that making that phone call was one of the funniest calls she has had to make as an educator. Story 18. When my daughter was in pre-K, I got a call to come have a chat with the main supervisor. So I roll in, grab a seat and ask, "What's up?" There was another kid there that had a bad habit of scratching and biting other kids. She had done so to my daughter a time or two in the past. I told the pre-K teachers to keep an eye out for it. Well, apparently the kid decided to set her sights on my daughter again, biting her on the arm. Except this time my daughter decided she had zero left to give, pulled off her shoe, and beat the other mongrel about the head with it. They had to be physically separated. I sat back and laughed, saying, "Mess with a bull, you'll get the horns." Supervisor smirked and said, "Yes, indeed." Later that evening, I had to explain to my daughter that hitting people with your shoe is not the best of ideas. My kid rocks. The mental image of your girl beating a bully with her shoe is frickin' hilarious. Story 19. Unicorn Club. So my daughter was in 5th grade. She was proving to be pretty responsible, so she was allowed to have a cell phone. Because she was home about an hour before I was on weekdays, and an Instagram account that I heavily monitored. We never had any issues. Still haven't, and she's now in high school. Well, I got a call from her school's principal one day. He tells me 2 boys were fist-fighting in the lunchroom. I asked what that had to do with my daughter. Well, apparently my child had used an Instagram account to start what was essentially a cult called Unicorn Club. Unicorns were obviously the worship deity, with goats being the devil figure to the unicorn gods. These 2 boys got into a fistfight over whether unicorns or goats were better. I had to pick her up to prevent further disputes and disband the Unicorn Club. Story 20. My daughter, 2 at the time, last summer, managed to grab some scissors, sharpened first, and walked around dripping blood across a Montessori classroom. She was fine, and didn't even need stitches, but the handprint on the fish tank was some classy work. My other daughter, identical twins, holds the quote-unquote record at the nursery of being sent home before she'd even been signed in for the day from the start of the school year. She was playing with a toy before going off to her room. The other kid decided they wanted that toy and tried to take it. My daughter, this tiny little girl, turns around and clocks this much bigger boy with a perfect right hook and carries on playing with said toy. Story 21. When my darling child was in 1st grade, I got a call from the school to let us know that the quiet, shy kid was put on red and had to serve lunch detention. Cue up a sense of panic as usually, it was her twin in trouble. We joked that this child's native name would be Little River Run Still But Deep, referring to the idea that on the surface, water can appear calm but the undertow will end you. She never complained, barely cried as a baby and was generally the most easygoing person on the planet. But piss her off enough, she'll strike hard and fast. Like the time as toddlers, her twin was pushing her and knocking her down. She calmly walked into the kitchen with me to get her sippy cup and came back into the room, whacked her sister upside the head, and proceeded to watch cartoons. Twin had a good-sized egg on her head for that. What did she do that was so horrible? In class after the Zero Tolerance for Bullies program, she finally got tired of one of the boys throwing things at her and talking to her constantly. She wrote a note that said, "You will pass away someday." No direct threat of violence, but merely informing a 1st grader that he was mortal and would die at some point in the future. The teacher laughed when she told us, but said because it was right after the program she had to punish her. That's not really fair. That's not bullying. That's simply informing him of a future event. Did the other kid get in trouble too? Story 22. In 9th grade, I had this awful algebra class first thing in the morning. The teacher would just collect our homework and then hand out a test every day, so I would finish my test and then put my head down for some extra sleep. She would always scold me for this and for not being prepared. After a few weeks of her scolding me and me continuing on, she eventually called my mom in. Your son has been insubordinate. He rushes through tests and then sleeps in class. I have told him time and time again to check his work and he still does not. He has been unprepared for my class every day. My mom was very strict. I could tell she was mad at me, but she asked, how has he not been prepared? She turns to me, have you been neglecting your homework? Teacher replies, no, he has not been bringing in his calculator. The school required us all to have a fancy TI model calculator that costs $80. So my mother had my brother and I share one. I could tell she felt a little at fault, but it was algebra. I didn't need a calculator. My mom says, well, how are his grades? Teacher pulls out a stack of graded tests. He gets every answer right, but I have to take points away for him not checking his work with a calculator. Overall, he's a B+ student. My mom, well, it looks to me like he does not need the calculator. The teacher looked so shocked, speechless. I got excited because I knew mom was on my side for a change. Perhaps he's sleeping through the majority of her class because he isn't engaged with how the material is being taught. Oh, snap. I think he needs to be placed in a more advanced class. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you made it this far, I'm sure you'll also enjoy Teachers, what's the trashiest thing you've seen a parent do? Story 1 was too nasty. See you in that video.